Chelsea, they're all but a lock despite the 1-0 loss against Everton on Sunday. That a match that Romelu Lukaku not only didn't start, didn't even play in at all. Craig, it's against his former team. Chelsea needed a goal for, almost the entirety of the second half. What do you make of him not playing at all?
Well,
isn't that the game? Isn't that, if there was ever a moment for Tuchel to give him a run, wouldn't that have been it?
I would have thought bringing a player on if you're desperate for a goal, even if he's not your favourite and he's not in form, and you've thrown a few balls in the box as Everton defend deeper and deeper and deeper as they get more nervous. I kind of figure that would have been a bit of a gamble, a bit of a, just a chance to something. There's nothing to lose. It's a win-win at that point. It's not like you've started him and he's had another horror show. But clearly there's a lot of discord here. Clearly there's a player who's lost his confidence, has not been able to cut the mustard so far at Chelsea, second time round. So I don't know. This is another club. Yeah, they were in a League Cup final. Yeah, they're in an FA Cup final. We'll wait and see what happens there. But this is another one where the manager has sort of flying a little bit under the radar with results. Yeah, I'll give you sanctions and all that sort of stuff. But trust me, this Chelsea season was derailing long before there was any sanctions. This was derailing domestically around the Christmas period. And please, nobody mentioned the Club World Cup. Because I don't include glorified friendlies when I'm analysing these teams that spend big bucks.
Ian, back to Lukaku. That's his just one start in his last 9 games for Chelsea. What does it tell us about his future at the club?
Well, I think they'd let him go, frankly, if they got the right offer. But they might not get the right offer because he cost £97.5 million. And he has to go down as the worst signing of the season, really, for that kind of money. I think he scored 5 goals in the Premier League throughout the whole campaign. What was it he got last year for Inter? 30. You could argue that Chelsea haven't tweaked their style in any way to suit his kind of play, but he hasn't really made any kind of big statement on his own behalf, has he? There was the injury pretty early on in his career. Then there was the infamous interview where he seemed to be hankering after a move back to Italy, and it's kind of been all downhill since then. Basically, at the moment, he's just a misfit there, and that was summed up by the fact that even when they're chasing a goal late on at Goodison Park, he doesn't come on.
Shaka, put yourself in Lukaku's shoes. Do you stay and fight for the job or move on?
I'll be honest, I'm not sure that it's Lukaku's decision because for all the reasons that Ian just spelled out. I'm not sure who comes in and takes that chance. But let's assume that somebody out there has decided to match Chelsea's valuation, whatever that may be, for whatever reason that may be. If I'm Lukaku, I'm thinking I've got to move on, especially if it's a manager who I feel it wants me, has faith in me, and can get the best out of me yet again. Because right now, and you're right, Sebi, against a former club, you're 1 down, chasing the game, getting nothing from their strikers. Even if you just change the formation to bring Lukaku on, I thought that was a little bit of a slap in the face of Romelu Lukaku from Thomas Tuchel for a number of reasons. And it probably says exactly how low his standing is with Thomas Tuchel right now. So you think you have to move on. But as I said, I'm not sure that club to move him on to is out there.
Thomas Tuchel, Romelu Lukaku looks to me like a player who wants to be anywhere bar plying his trade for Chelsea Football Club. He looks as if he wants to get the hell out of there because he's not been able to handle the pressure. And yeah, I still believe that he brought it on himself and the club handled it badly around the Christmas period. I think both Thomas Tuchel and Lukaku did not handle the situation well. I thought they all poured gasoline on the flames. And he never recovered from it, and so he put himself in that position, but then again, so did the manager. But listen, if it was Thomas Tuchel that had the final say in signing Romelu Lukaku, then he knows the way he plays. He knows he's pretty steadfast in the system he plays. So if that was his choice, Thomas Tuchel, yep, that's the man I want, yep, let's spend that money, then it's his responsibility to get the best out of him. If it was brought in over his head and that was not the player he wanted, that's a different scenario. But all I think, in my humble opinion, and we don't know what's going to happen, who the hell's taking over this club, what they're going to spend, what decisions they're going to make. But ultimately, I think if Chelsea are going to attack Liverpool and City over a 38-game season, it's crystal clear off the back of this season, it's not going to be with Romelu Lukaku. It's not going to work. I think there's too much damage to turn this around. All of a sudden next year, he's a 30 goals a season man under this manager with this team, Sebi. I just don't think it's going to happen. And that's the second big failure at one end of the team, just after the other big failure at the other end, when they spent an absolute fortune on Kepa, and then Frank Lampard wanted to get him out. Then they go out and sign Mendy, who's a much better keeper, and now they have the same problem in the striking department. It beggars belief.
Shaka, what is Lukaku's actual level? You know, it hasn't worked out at Chelsea. It didn't work out at United. There's obviously exceptional success at Inter. What kind of player is he?
I think he's. Can I say one-dimensional in that he needs to play in a counter-attacking team, a team that breaks from the back and he has room to run in behind, which is where I thought he was at his best for Everton. I thought that suited his style at Inter Milan. Listen, you don't do the things you saw in Serie A from Romelu Lukaku without being a world-class striker, but he has his place, and that place is not Chelsea and not that style of football. We say the same things about Paul Pogba. There's no question that Paul Pogba is a world-class midfielder. He's a world champion with France. You see his performances for France, you saw his performances for Juventus, but it just doesn't work for Manchester United because their style doesn't suit him, and he's similarly one-dimensional in that it has to suit who he is as a player. So that's where I think it hasn't worked for Romelu Lukaku. It won't work in teams like Manchester City. It probably won't work in teams like Liverpool. It certainly hasn't worked in Chelsea. Somebody who just is trying to hit you on the break could probably take that chance on Romelu Lukaku.
Well, let's be quite frank about it. Yes, Serie A is a competitive league and it has some big teams, but it's a poorer standard. It's a poorer standard in the Premier League at the moment. And, you know, you can butter it up any way you want, with Inter Milan and with Juventus, who are poor at the moment, with AC Milan, who've struggled for a long time, been better this year again. All these teams, they're not even in with a sniff of the Champions League or the Europa League. You know, so it's a poorer standard. I'm not saying it's a poor league, but it's a poorer league, poorer standard of league and players and teams than the Premier League. And hence, it's a little easier to score goals against poorer defenders. There'll be loads of people out there who can't see by Serie A, will be screaming about what I've just said. But it's fact. And it's cyclical. Maybe, and it has been at other times, it's been stronger. And maybe it'll be stronger down the line. But at the moment, it's easier for him. No matter what Ronaldo or anybody said, if the quote he said, it's more difficult to score goals in Serie A than all that. No. It's a poorer standard, and when you play against poorer defenders and poorer teams, it is easier to score.
Ian, final thought on this to you. Do you think Lukaku could find that success at a big club in England, or do you think he needs to leave the Premier League?
He could find it in England. He scored in England before. He was pretty prolific with Everton, and they weren't that high in the table. He even got 17 goals in the season at West Bromwich Albion. His goal return at Manchester United wasn't awful, but Ole Gunnar Solskjaer didn't fancy him. Here's a fanciful scenario. Say Harry Kane, I don't think it's going to happen, but say Harry Kane left Tottenham and they were looking for a striker and to take a punt. Might Antonio Conte, who got the best out of Lukaku at Inter, might he be tempted to go in and get Lukaku for what would probably be a cut price deal? I mean, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it's just a scenario. You never know in football, do you?
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.